Happy to be with all of you folks. My goal today is to share the new features, introduce you to the new features of Activate Learning's web universal interface. And Chris, just give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen because I don't see my little bar around it. Okay, perfect. So at any rate, I know that many of you are very familiar with the interface. Used to be called IDE. We're going to be calling it the UI. So that's my goal. So I have selected a unit and just want to go over what you would initially see as a huge difference. Prior to the introduction of our new interface, you had two sides. Those sides were the teacher side, which was the right side of the screen, and you had access to student materials on the left side of the screen. So what you'll notice immediately is that is no longer the case. So everything that you need for your teaching, with the exception of these few little things up here that I'll go over with you later up in the upper right-hand corner, or everything is located on the left-hand side. So we're going to review the things that many of you are already familiar with. However, I'm also going to introduce to you the new features. And I want to remind you that Chris said, please use the chat box if there's something that you'd like me to show again, or something that you'd like me to cover that or a question you have that I might not have addressed at all. Please feel free to put that into the chat box. So we'll get started, and I do have a student login opened as well, so we will be able to look at these new features from both the student side and the teacher side. The first thing I want you to notice is your teacher portal button is up here. That used to be information that was on the right-hand side that was kind of spread out. Now it's consolidated. We will look at that in a little bit. But I want you to notice that the top of the above the lesson box and below the lesson box are two different features. This stuff up here, we're going to call generic. This stuff down here, we're going to call specific to whatever lesson you choose for your students to participate in. And I also want you to notice that these buttons that used to be 10 or 15 in number on the right-hand side are now consolidated into 4 pieces. And I want us to think of them in a certain way. Again, our generic, this is an overview for long-term planning that is above that lesson box that you can use for sketching out what you would do over a 9-week period. But more interesting than that is below the box, what we have is planning. What are my students going to learn? Everything that you need to figure out connections to standards, how the different SCP or the 3 dimensions will be addressed is going to be in that plan button. The teach part is what are the students doing? This is the activity itself. So once you've done that planning and looked at that, then you'll be able to get directly into your instruction. And then assign and assess, give you evidence of student learning. This is where you'll be able to track student growth over time. So let's get started now and break these things down. First of all, you have an overview. This is something that's new. You have a list of the lessons, including any appendix lessons that are associated with a unit, and you have a description of the anchoring phenomenon and how that is going to connect below to what students will learn throughout the course of this unit. There are also some samples of the videos, these activity videos that are included, just to get even a better sense of what students are going to learn. So this is what the unit will default to once your unit is chosen. And remember, your units are based, what you see is based on the instructional sequence that your school district or state utilizes based on what standards and units you have associated with a particular grade level. So when we hit into and when we select the unit overview, this is where you're going to recognize some pieces that were over on the right-hand side before. So here you have a detailed overview of what students will learn and what they will do broken down into learning sets, the same as what you had before. You have your projected images, the entire unit's worth of them here so that you can access and preview them for long-term planning. These, again, as they were in old IDE, can be found in various places throughout the interface. So these two things are not so important in terms of really being able to find them at a later date. However, for long-term planning, this scientific principles list that highlights the lesson in which specific accessible content is developed is something that's very, I think, interesting and something that you should be familiar with prior to entering the instruction for the unit, because it gives you a sense of at what point in time real important content, accessible content, is developed. Below that, you have your standards. Now, what we have here is an NGSS alignment, but what you'll find is, since every state in the country is, their standards are developed around three-dimensional ideas, that these science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts, as well as the connections to ELA and math, are pertinent, whether or not you are a NGSS state or not. You can sort of think of it as like, where am my students learning this particular DCI, and what is my performance expectation or indicator or standard, however it is, whatever it's called in your state, what goes along with these three pieces. So you could technically have a little sticker that is stuck over it with your state standards. Sometimes you'll find that your state standards have been uploaded so that you have access to them on your interface as well. So while, again, you may not use this performance expectation, these three aspects of the three dimensions will be important to you. The unit calendar, here's where you're going to find how you can break your unit down over the period of your instruction, be it 9 weeks or however else you have broken down your units of study in your school district. So that's, again, long-term planning, highlighting your scientific principles, entire unit of standards, and unit calendar. So those three things were also in the old IDE and are also here as well. But this is where we're going to start to see some differences when we get down here. Just as you needed to before, you do need to select a lesson. So once a lesson is selected, all of the information that becomes available when you select a particular topic here reflects that lesson specifically. So you have your teacher background knowledge, everything that you need to highlight the content that will be there and to ensure that you are well versed in what students will be able to learn. That looks pretty much the same. The lesson setup, there have been added photographs and other pieces that make your teaching even easier than it was using the old IDE. So you'll find those under lesson setup, anything that you might need. If there's an activity video, that'll be there as well. If there are specific safety guidelines, which you will find more in the chemistry units, those will be noted here. If not, it's going to suggest that you refer to the iQuest overview in order to get generic information about how to keep students or how to have students practice safety in every single iQuest unit. That iQuest overview is also up here in the upper right-hand corner. But here it is broken down for specific lessons. Differentiation is the same way. The iQuest overview is full of differentiation strategies, but if there are specific ideas that connect to a particular lesson, they will be listed in differentiation for a lesson. The materials button is basically the same thing that you're used to. You're going to notice that the projected images are highlighted, the same icons that made your teaching easy or using the old IDE are also here. Your print the lesson and print SE answers PDFs are exactly as they used to be. Remember, this is your answer key for those of you who are using print editions or need some support when evaluating student responses on the universal interface. When we get to teaching the lesson, This gives those all of the information, again, that you need to determine what students will be learning, which is going to be listed in the standard, or allows you to connect an iQuest lesson to a standard, as well as observable terms of what you will see students doing in a lesson. You'll find that in your learning performances. So here's what, again, will be learned. They're going to determine patterns and what is needed for people to see an object. And this is what they're going to do when they are engaged in a particular activity. And you do have the introducing the activity here. So it's kind of a crossover, as you'll find in wrapping up, of what you are how you're beginning a lesson. Now, you might, I just also wish to mention that if you do have your print teacher's edition, that your teaching begins with your introducing the activity. If you're using the slide decks, which I'm going to remind you of in just a moment, the introducing the activity and the wrapping up the lesson are going to be found in those slide decks. So this appears to be actual teaching here, because there are some questions, but this is where we are determining whether students have grasped what is being learned in the lesson. It also has the connections to the word wall and the driving question board and accessible learning. Now, we're going to see that while this is highlighted here, we do have other opportunities to find that information in different places within the universal interface, as well as the storylines and slide decks. Here we have the entire unit standards. When we click here in lesson standards, it does go directly to lesson 2 or whatever lesson you have highlighted from your drop-down menu. So remember that these 3 boxes here help guide your instruction, because it does have the disciplinary core ideas, the content that everyone is learning, as well as your science and engineering practices and cross-cutting concepts that are highlighted in the lesson. So here again, everything that we need to plan for successful instruction to increase student achievement is found in this plan button. When we get to the teach section, what you find again is everything that you had in your instructional part in the old IDE, as well as that link to the student edition. So now we have this along in the teaching, so that when you're looking at an activity and you're examining the different types of discourse that students will participate in, that you have the ability to go directly to the student edition and see, okay, that's what I'm doing, and this is what students are doing, so that you will clearly have a sense of how student responses are going to connect directly to the instruction that you're providing for students. So I'm going back to the activities just to remind you that, as in the print teacher edition, you've got most of your discussion in the blue boxes. You have highlighted purposes for your discourse, as well as identified types of discourse that students are participating in. When you get to the reading section, as in old IDE, you have your introducing the reading and your reading follow-up. In order to directly view a reading, you will need to go to the student edition so that you can see that. I want to remind you that in the new universal interface, as well as in IDE, when you want to provide instruction for students as to how they highlight or annotate text, that would be done directly from a student login rather than the teacher login. But all of the other features that the students have access to are on both this side and through a student login. Now, I have highlighted lesson 2, and here is one of the places that I have available for downloading a slide deck. So those are accessible from here, as well as in the teacher portal that we'll look at in a moment. And if you haven't seen these PowerPoints, I want to show them to you just so that you'll be aware that they were there, and they are editable. so that if you have specific focuses in your state standards that you need to add, you have the ability to manipulate the slides. You'll note that the projected images are in here. So we've seen them in the topic above the lesson line, as well as in other places within the teacher portal. So we have the slide decks available with the projected images, as well as in looking at the end, there are generic slides that you can add for group discussion. There's support for discourse. So there are a lot of great slides at the end of these slide decks that you'll want to refer to and add based on the needs of your students. So we've got our activities, reading. Here's another place for the slides here. The slides are here. Here's our student edition. The readings are in here, as well as the activity videos. Now, these videos were developed for instruction, remote instruction during COVID. And quite frankly, I hope that you never have to use any of them. However, remember that they are available and could be utilized for remediation or to allow students who miss particular hands-on instruction to make up their work. So they are still a part of the universal interface. It's going to take me a while to get used to saying that. So we've gone through our plan, which is what are we going to instruct? We've gone through our teach, what are our resources for our teaching a lesson? And now I'm going to get to something new, and that is the assign. So in the new universal interface, you have the ability to create assignments and to view those assignments, which will guide the instruction. Now I'm going to start down here with configure. And I want to just show you this one button that is going to dictate how your students access information in the universal interface. Now you have two choices: assignments off, all activities shown. That will allow the student view to resemble old IDE, where they had access to all of their units. I have selected assignments enabled, all activities in unit prior to current lessons shown. So if I am on lesson 3 and I have provided assignments in lessons 1, 2, and 3, those are the only lessons that students can see and have access to. They would not have access to the rest of the activities in the unit. So you're going to want to play with that. It's designed to enable you to keep students from working ahead, and to only give them access to certain lessons within a unit. So I've got the set assignments enabled. Now you can change this anytime. So it's not something that you have to select once and you're stuck with that for the entire year. Now I have 2 classes that have been developed. One is Ngss version 3, and the other one is Ngss full year. Now you'll notice that what you see here is 1 lesson here and 2 lessons here, because the assignments that I created for my students are different. Now, when I go to lesson 2, you'll see that, yes, I have made some assignments for that class in lesson 2, and I have different assignments for this class. You'll also note that I can see here how many students have submitted responses to a particular activity. Now there's a settings button over here, and this allows you to cancel an assignment. I'm going to caution you about canceling assignments at this point. There were a few little bugs that I know they're working on that may show up. So think about your assignments before you create them. You also have a display date. Do you want it? If I have this one now selected, I don't have to put a start date. It's going to start and become available to students as soon as I create my assignment. If I hit future, I am expected to select a date that I want the activity or the activity to be available for students. So that is for editing assignments. So again, your assignments do not have to be made the same for all of your sections. And those of you who teach multiple grades, that's going to be particularly important to you. So this is viewing assignments. So now I want to create an assignment, and I'm going to create an assignment for this class in activity 2. So I want to create for that Ngss version 3 class. My lesson is lesson 2. The activity that I want to assign is reading. I want it to begin now. I want my due date to be the 30th. I can select a time. And if I wish to make a comment, like annotate text to show conditions for seeing something, I can do that. I do not need to make that assignment. I do not need to make a comment. Make sure you hit the assignment button. If you don't hit the assignment button, that assignment will not be evident to students. So now when I refresh my screen and I select my lesson, you see that that is immediately available for students. Now I'm going to come over here and pull up a student screen and just show you how that connects. I'm logged in as a student that is in the other class other than the one that I just created the assignment. But you'll note that when a student logs in, the default screen goes to assignments that have been created. And in this instance, I want to show all of them. Now, this assignment was due on the 21st of July. That's today at 10:30 a.m. It's late. And the student is now aware of the fact that that assignment has not been completed. So these others have due dates that are farther out. They have not been, they're not late yet. So that bell, that message is not there for the student. These are my new assignments. If I click over here, I see the assignments that have been completed. So I have an opportunity to look at that, as well as any assessments. So that is what the students will see in their view. They also can look at all of their books. Again, yours may not be arranged this way because your sequence, your scope and sequence may be different from mine, but all of the books that they have available are there, as well as any grades. So if students are in multiple units, they will need to come in here and select the unit that you wish for them to view their progress on. So again, it will default to my work, and they can look at assignments that are new that have not been completed, as well as those that have been completed. So that's what a student will see based on your assigning of a lesson. So that is a new feature. And so viewing assignments and creating assignments are both new features that are part of the new universal interface. So if there's anything that you want me to go back over, please make sure you put that in the chat box. You'll note that all of this these 4 selections, grade activity by student, grade activity by question, view notes, and view grades, are all the same as they were in the old IDE. And just to refresh your memory, once you select, once you have assigned something and you want to grade pieces of that assignment, then you'll need to assign point values to that. And for instance, I'm just going to pull this one up and remind you that those places, the boxes, are available for you to weight your questions based on the value that you want to assign to them. in case you haven't noticed, there are new sentence starters that are available for students. They still have the ability to change text color for editing their answers. All of those features are still available. But you may have noticed that there are a couple things that are different here. Select my class. So I've assigned I have created an assignment. In this case, it's activity 2.2 for students. It is not due yet. However, if I decide that all the students have completed it and I do not wish for them to have the opportunity to go back and make any changes, I have the ability to lock the assignment for all students. Once that's done, if you have anyone who was absent or hasn't completed their assignment, they will not have access, because once it's locked or unlocked for all students. Not only that, is once you have provided feedback to a student, you do have the ability to reassign. If you think that the assignment hasn't been completed as completely as you would like it to be, then you can go in and reassign that student, that lesson. I can't reassign Rita, and that's who I'm logged in as. They will get that message that they have to go back in and reevaluate their responses based on the feedback that you have provided. When you do provide feedback, that's done in the same way that you did it prior to the new universal interface. You have the ability to create comments and provide that feedback either by student, saving your comments, locking them, and then you also have the ability to grade an activity by question. So once again, don't forget, when you're sitting there like I just was looking at a blank screen, it's because the lesson and the class was not selected. So in this particular one, since I know that this question is one that has a lot of value, it's the one that asks students to apply requirements to see something, conditions for sight. I just would go down here and find it for myself easier to evaluate student responses this way, because I stay more consistent, because I'm looking at the same question and responses by all students. When I go into my notes for students, well, one thing that you'll notice immediately is it resembles the old IDE. Well, there's a reason for that, and that's because, and you'll notice that it's operating a little bit slower as well, because everything has not been moved over. So if you do notice, oh, this looks familiar, it's because it actually is. But no, please be assured that as the next few weeks go by, that you're going to that this has changed over to more reflect the interface, the universal interface that's new. You'll find the same thing with assess. There's nothing that's any different here at this point in time, as the moving over to the complete new interface has not finished yet. So everything that you did last year with creating new questions, copying from the question bank, is the same now as it was prior to the new interface. So all these buttons are the same. You'll start and stop your assessments the same way. Students will continue to be locked out of their ability to respond or to look back at anything once an assessment is started. So there's nothing at this point that's any different in the new IDE than in the new universal interface and what you're used to in IDE. So that's this side here. If you have any questions, please make sure you put them in the chat and we'll get back to them. But I want to go on now and show you the new teacher portal, how it is organized, and the rest of the features in IDE. So when you come here, you have your updates. that anytime anything new is added based on teacher suggestions, if they've made changes, added anything, you'll find that in the update. You will continue to get that notice. I want to come over here now and compare that to this. You'll note that there is a version updates button underneath here in the question mark, because this question mark is where all of your support will now be found. You have your iQuest overview, the PDF of that. You also have that iQuest overview here that is accessible by chapter in by hitting this iQuest overview button. So the information there is going to be the same as it is if you downloaded the entire PDF that's located here. Now, this is your teacher edition. This is your student edition. Now, when we looked under Teach here, you had, in the plan, you had the Print SE Teacher Edition. This is your answer key. This is blank sheets of the student edition. So if you have students who have 504 plans, who have IEPs, who struggle with responding online, then you have that ability to print off a page for them and have them fill it in. You've got your unit storyline here. And again, this is a place that if you haven't had an opportunity to look through this, please make sure you do, because within here, you have that same organization of what students are going to learn, what students are going to do, and how you will know in this assessment column here are specific assessment opportunities that iQuest wants to call out. You'll find that that same information is located in the wrapping up the lesson section as well. You also have over here references to the driving question board in this column, as well as candidate words that you would want to put on your word wall. So please make sure you pay attention to that unit storyline. It's a great help for long and short-term planning. There are also some other really, really important and just great little jewels that are hidden in here. One of them, you've got your a rubric for explanations, and down here you have a template for helping you really increase students' ability to write CERs. So make sure you look at this. You've got table tents for helping students with their discourse and all kinds of other information. If you have OnPar, which is a separate assessment system that is also accessible through Assess down here, there's an OnPar button, which takes you directly to OnPar. This is the alignment of iQuest to OnPar. It lets you know when you would want to administer an OnPar assessment. So make sure you look at all of these little goodies that are found in here. So those are unit resources, again, to take you through the whole unit. When you get to lesson planning resources, you have your materials chart, which is great for helping you keep an inventory of your materials and lets you know what do you need for each student, what do you need for the entire class in teaching. You have setup videos, different from activity videos. Activity videos are for students. These are setup videos that are for the teacher. You've got paper and pencil for your assessment. I'm assuming you're not going to need that because you've got all of that available to you. And supplemental resources are not as good as what you get on the Facebook page now and on the YouTube channel. So these are just things that teachers had sent in. Now, if you'll also find, and again, in this particular unit, it's not needed, but any of your safety data sheets will also be found in your lesson planning resources. Those are especially important in the chemistry. In teaching the lesson resources, you've got your projected images. You also have them in your unit overview. You also have them embedded in your slide decks. So you'll find those here as well. The last one is a zip file that contains all of the projected images if you want to download them all to your computer. You've got the audio readings, but those audio readings are also included within, they are embedded within the teacher side as well as the student side. But if you need to send MP3 files to students, that's where you'd find them. Here's your slide deck. You had the slide deck in Teach down here for slides. You also had it at the top of the lesson when the activity was selected. So you've got those in multiple places as well. You have colors, any simulations that are used will also be found in this section of the teacher portal. So that's your teaching the lesson. Remote learning resources. These are the pieces that were developed during COVID. So you've got how to use them, how to have parents use them. Again, my only hope for all of us is that nobody has to go near here for remote purposes. And you've got, these are the activity videos that are embedded along in the student edition side. So you'll find those here. So those, again, this remote learning resources tab of the teacher portal was selected. So that in a nutshell is the teacher portal. Now I want to go back over here to support, because this has changed significantly and it is significantly better. When you go, if you need to, if you need to submit a support ticket, which I hope you never have to do, but if you do, you'll note that it is more targeted now. So you will select the type of support that you need before you submit your question. That allows the support folks who to direct any questions to the place that they need to go immediately. So that's contact support. Support center is articles and other information that is now organized in such a way that you can go to the article that you need help from and see if questions can be answered that way. I also encourage you to go and subscribe to the Activate Learning YouTube channel, because that will provide you with loads of information for anything that we've covered today or anything else that you need. So especially like making those assignments, there is a video on creating assignments. So make sure you take a look at that. So that's, and this is your logout button. Sorry. Oh, I do have to show you some more things on the student side. So when I go, this will be important. When a student goes to a particular assignment, and that assignment has been filled in, at the bottom, there is a turn this in button. Until this is selected, it's not turned in. So, and again, this is based on the fact that I'm making assignments. Remember, in Configure, you had an opportunity to determine how you wanted to handle student assignments. They are continuing to save. You'll note that there are little timestamps here that show when a particular response was completed. The draw boxes, again, you have the ability to view those on the teacher side, which I'll show you in a minute, but I want to remind you about this submit button up here for drawings, because until that is selected, that particular drawing will not be submitted. Now I'm going to come over here into lesson 2 and just make sure that you know that this feature exists. So we're going to go over to activity 2.2 where that drawing is. Now, I don't have the ability to see my students in real time submitting their written responses, but I just want to remind you that you have 2 selections here, draw and students. And when I select my class, all of the little, I get little thumbnails of all of the drawings that have been done. Now, this one was cut and pasted in with a drawing being made on a sheet of paper rather than being drawn, which is also going to be important for some of your IEP kids, 504 kids, and kids who really like to be very direct in their details. So once these drawings are done, which I can see in real time, I have the ability to pick them, to highlight them, and I can use them for discussion in the classroom. So just another feature that was in IDE that is also a part of the universal interface. That really is, I believe, everything I wanted to share. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and put them in chat. I do see that we had a Spanish translations, and I know that the student editions are available in Spanish. So in terms of what's been put, Chris, I don't, or Mary Kelly.
I don't have all of that information either, but I can certainly follow up.
Okay.
When I send a follow-up email with the recording, I will include something on that as well.
Okay, and I know Mary Kelly is on here, and Mary, if you know the answer to that, I know you can't unmute yourself, but you can certainly, if you have any up-to-date information on that, and want to stick that in the chat box about that question regarding Spanish, please stick that in. Thank you, Gary. So I will stick around here with Chris to answer any questions that you have. Anything that you want me to show you again, anything that I may have omitted, then we'll be here for a few more minutes to make sure all your questions are answered. And thanks so much. And I hope you love this new interface as much as I love this new interface. I think it's going to be a great way to begin the school year.
Yeah, and I wanted to add, Ellen, really quickly. So just so everybody knows before they hang up, like all current user districts have automatically been transferred over to this new user interface. So when you log in, if you haven't already, you will now see this design and this format with the plan, teach, assign, assess. If your school wants any further professional development, you can contact your sales rep if you want to let them know that, or if you know that. And we can do that for you as well. So this is just kind of an introduction. But like Ellen said, I shared the YouTube link, and I'll also send that in the follow-up email because we do have some great video tutorials that will help you out as well. But thank you all so much. Thank you, Ellen. Great job.
Thanks. And Mary's answered. We have readings in Spanish in the Spanish version, but not sure about the audios. Yes, as long as you have not submitted, the question was, can I do corrections on a drawing? So let me bring up this student drawing again. So as long as I have not been locked out, then I can go ahead and add to my drawing and resave it. Now, once I've done that, you'll note that that stamp changed immediately to this. So the teacher would also be aware of that. And once that's done, if feedback has already been given, that signal will come up for the teacher. You refresh this and go back to lesson 2. Activity 2 by 2. Oops, in the wrong place. When I go to grade activity by student, which is what I'm just going to pull up here, I will get a message which isn't going to show right now, just because I haven't really gone in and given any feedback to these students yet. But I would get another notice that here's the timestamp would change. Actually, it did, 7/21/444. So I've got a new timestamp here that lets me know that Rita has changed her assessment. Now, of course, if that assessment's over, she can't get back in it if the date is gone, but she is still within the allowable time that when I created this assignment, it was allowed for. So any other questions? Commenting. You don't, the question is about commenting for students. So you could, while you have to give feedback to individual students, you don't have to retype it every time. Let me go to grade activity by question here and show you what I'm talking about. So here I'm looking for those four pieces of feedback. When you have only listed 3, let's say everybody did that, I can just carry that down to everybody. It does not need to be retyped. So that's just one of the ways that you can do it. The comments, there are going to be certain comments that you're going to want to give to everybody. And when you see that, cutting and pasting is going to be one of the ways to do that. So just keep that in mind as a strategy that you can use for that. Hope that answered. Okay. Any other? Mary, in terms of facilitator creating a class, then I'll be happy to help you with that later. I cannot answer questions for you, unfortunately, regarding the different learning management systems. I do know that in most of the learning management systems, you can make assignments directly through that rather than even coming over here to create an assignment. But I'm sorry, but I'm just not familiar enough with the different learning management systems that school districts have to be able to answer that for you properly. So that would be something where I will encourage you to contact your sales rep, and they'll be able to provide more specific information. Happy to, again, answer any other questions. Well, Chris?
I think we are good, Ellen. That's a wrap. Thank you all for joining us today. And you can expect an email from me by Friday with the recording and also some other resources that you will find valuable. I'll include the link so you don't have to search for them. But thank you all so much. So
thanks, everyone. Happy to be with you.